Hello students, your instructor John Mandiola here again with another screencast. This one part of the Serifs number 2 group. This is Antique Olive. So it's a typeface that doesn't get used a lot. It's kind of a, I don't think it gets the respect it deserves. It's a very interesting typeface, that's for sure. We'll get some of the key characteristics of it. This is just a regular version, and if you look at the O, if it seems top heavy or like an upside down egg, that's because it is. It's a very top heavy typeface, somewhat similar in the way that Vice was top heavy, as one of the serifs we looked at. But this one doesn't necessarily get thinner as it gets to the bottom, it just gets narrower. So like the stroke is the same way, it's just that the whole shape kind of canters down toward the center. The R also is a huge bowl, okay, and the S almost looks upside down, where it's wider up top, across the top, kind of like across the chest than it is across the waist or the hips. Other things, look at the lowercase letters, it's nice and big, so you can see it. Look how curvy these are. The bracketing there is really curvy, and the big hook, the vertical ending on the finial. The eyes, or the A is just like an upside down version of that. It's very loopy bowl there, kind of just curves out, more like a lock of hair than like, you know, a belly of a man or something like that. Look at the gigantic X height. So here's an eye. X height, it's only like, you know, a fifth or sixth of the way more to go before it gets to the top of the S, and the dot is really wide and round and actually is above the cap height. So this is a super high X height. You can see it right there, uppercase and a lowercase. They're almost just as big as the uppercase letter is. So because it's a high X height, it has very low descender height, because I mean it's not much descender left to go to get to the cap height. And because of that, to make it uniform, the descender is quite modest as well. It doesn't dip very far down. So again, you can see just it's kind of this upside down, wonky nature to it. Some of these things get accentuated if you look at a bold version of it. So this is a pretty heavy version of it. But again, there's that curvy bracketing of the T and the big hook. The loopiness of the A is even more accentuated here. Look at the not just the C, but the D as well. It's kind of like, again, it narrows toward the as it gets toward the bottom. It doesn't get thinner weight, it just narrows. And it's so thick that if you look at letters like the N, see how it looks like it's kind of odd, how it's notched in a little bit too deep? That's so that when it gets printed off a press, that ink, if it fills in, it'll fill in and still look like a normal N. And if it doesn't fill in, it'll look okay as well. So notice the M has it too, where the crevice goes quite deep. The G, again, look at big round bulbous G, and the modest descender almost seems to start before it even gets to the baseline. So this is easily and distinctively Antique Olive. Look at the E, how it just stops at the vertical finial right there. Alright, so if it feels kind of like silly or goofy or not to be taken seriously, that's just one of the traits of Antique Olive. However, when it's bold, it can, like this, it can take on a more serious nature, especially if it's used in all caps. So here's an example of that. This is a poster from the Fast and Furious, and this actually is Antique Olive. So that same goofy typeface we looked at before, you're like, how do you know it's Antique Olive? If I look here, especially at the bold version, you see at the A, it's just flat across the top. It makes no attempt to get to a point or to wear a hat or anything like that. If you look back at the poster, there it is, very flat across the top. Notice how bulbous that R bowl is. Things like that. And look at, it's so thick actually, it's so bold that there's not even a lot of room in the bottom of the F. It's just these two huge arms and things like that. And actually, I don't know about the ampersand, but all this little text right here, and red and white up here, and then red again and white down here, that's Antique Olive as well. Here's another one. Here's another movie. So this is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This was like a VHS from back in the day. Anyway, not all of this is Antique Olive, only two parts. Up here, which is Incredible Tales of Scientific Wonder, and then down here, Far Beyond the Stars. Two interesting things to note. Again, the A, flat across the top, makes no attempt to get pointy. The other thing which is kind of interesting, let's see if I can zoom in on this. If you look at the F, okay, talk about the two huge, thick arms. If you look at the E, the arms actually aren't the same thickness as they are in the F. That's because there wouldn't be enough room for an extra leg down there if the F was just converted to an E. So the E arms and legs are actually thinner than the F's arms. So that's kind of interesting to note too, and the S almost runs out of room because it's so chunky. Last example, this is an Air France logo again. chopped off A up top, really thin arms.